Oh. Hello, everyone. My name is Naomi Boyer, and I'm with Education Design Lab, and we are really excited to be here with you today to talk about our 21st century skills and how we go about both learning and validating those skills. I'm joined today by my colleagues, Jeff Lewis, who's our Client Success Manager for Visible, and we'll tell you about what that is in a little bit, and my colleague, Tara Laughlin, who leads our X Credit project. Both of these are really exciting opportunities, and we're excited to be with you. Now, I'll say I am the Executive Director of Digital Transformation at the lab, and what that means is I get to have so much fun every day. We are working on supporting the 21st century skills, but we're also heavily engaged in implementing both technology and human process to facilitate the visibility of skills through digital micro-credentialing, through learner employment records, skills wallets, and really using technology for individuals to be able to show what they know and they can do to lead towards opportunity. Next slide, please, Jeff. So I thought I'd tell you a little bit about the lab, and then we're going to jump into, go ahead, Jeff, that's good. And then we're going to jump into the depth of our presentation today. So at the lab, we use human-centered design thinking to co-design. So we design with, not for. We test, we build, and we tackle wicked issues like affordability, relevance, portability, and visibility. Our conversation today is really focused on that visibility part of our saying, and it's about designing towards the future of work. You can see the number of colleges and universities we've worked with, employers, and ecosystems, and that ecosystem and regional approach is growing. We are based in the United States, and we are a nonprofit. And however, we do have a number of global colleagues, and I'll say that this dialogue around skills has really been elevating to a global platform. Next slide, Jeff. So this is our theory of change. We use a design process. I mentioned we use human-centered design as the core of what we do. You can see here that we have an exploratory design phase. And at the bottom of that text where you see single moms and skills-based hiring are projects and things that we have going on that demonstrate that exploratory nature. But as a lab, we also do validation. And we are focused on designing for equitable impact. How do we make sure that everyone has opportunity to find meaningful work and flourish in their lives? Next slide, please, Jeff. So with that, and no further ado, we're going to turn it over to Jeff to talk to you a little bit about our Visible platform that is based off of that 21st century skills framework that I earlier mentioned. Jeff, on to you.
Hey guys, Jeff Lewis. As Naomi mentioned earlier, I'm the Visible Client Success Manager, meaning I manage this Visible platform. And so we're using the word visible and Visible platform. What is Visible? So it's a ready-made learning experience or a course for employers, institutions, learners, and it's designed to help make learning visible. So what would happen typically is a learner would access the quote Visible platform and engage in a course. They would be assessed as to whether they've mastered a particular skill in order to earn a digital badge. So in effect, it's a Visible as a skill acquisition tool. So we're talking about acquiring skills. What skills are we talking about? The lab collaborated with higher ed institutions, employers, learners, and through that collaboration, we identified the 9 most in-demand skills that will be required to be successful in the 21st century. And you can see them listed on the screen there: critical thinking, initiative, and so on. But if you were to ask let's say a professor who says they're teaching critical thinking skills, what that means, and you were to an employer were to say he's looking for employees with critical thinking, you might get 2 different answers. So what the lab did was, working in that collaboration, identify 4 sub-competencies that make up or define critical thinking, as well as the other skills. So if you can gather and assess relevant information, if you can question assumptions, draw conclusions, identify patterns, you are able to demonstrate critical thinking. but we felt it was important to go a little bit more granular with that. What does gather and assess relevant information mean? So that subcompetency, we developed subcompetency statements for, and then we went even further. So what does grounding problem solving in facts and rather than assertions mean? And we developed our rubric or learning objectives or the criteria necessary to demonstrate to say that you can gather and assess relevant information. And you can see those listed there. So when you take the skills, their corresponding subcompetencies, their corresponding subcompetency statements, and the rubrics, and you take that collectively, you get what is known as our 21st century skills competency framework. And there's a visual for you. The next slide I like. It's really I think a really very creative way to show what we call subcompetency map. So you might think with a little arithmetic, if you've got 9 skills and you've got 4 subcompetencies per skill, you would have 36 subcompetencies. However, and this is a great way that shows there is an overlap between certain subcompetencies and skills. So this, if you've ever been to Washington, D.C., this is affectionately known in the lab as the D.C. Metro map. So if you were to look at the initiative micro-credential, and if I were to, for example, take that initiative micro-credential course, earn my badge, I will have demonstrated acting as a catalyst, leading without title, learning from experience, and demonstrating self-awareness. I've already completed half of the resilience micro-credential because of this overlap. So where you see concentric circles, in this case, self-awareness is part of resilience. It also happens to be part of intercultural fluency and also part of initiative. So rather than the 36 subcompetencies, we actually have 27 subcompetencies. So the explicit, because what's needed to be successful is clearly spelled out in the subcompetencies and in the rubric. The learning is tangible and demonstrable. So if you combine that, the explicit competencies with kind of the micro nature of the courses, you'll have learner success. And with learner success, you'll get motivation. So in terms of how Visible can be deployed and delivered, there are 2 ways that you can deploy the micro-credential courses. One is what we call the toolkit, and the toolkit would be more if you wanted to develop your own micro-credential course. We have a whole set of resources that are free to people to use. However, if you wanted to issue an Education Design Lab authorized badge, digital badge, you would have to use our assessment and rubric, and those would need to be purchased. So you can develop your own course and purchase the assessments for $50 per assessment. So with a little bit of arithmetic, if I wanted to develop my own critical thinking course, I could buy the assessments for each of those 4 subcompetencies for $200, structure my own course, and then I would have built my own credential for, say, $200. The other option is a kind of prepackaged, ready to go, out of the box course developed already for you. And that would be the Visible platform, which we'll see shortly. You have 2 options with Visible. You can either do a plug and play deployment where through an LTI connection, learners would access the courses through whatever LMS you happen to be using. The other option would be learners just basically going to our Get Visible portal and logging in there and completing their coursework. In terms of how you can deliver these courses, this is really all completely dependent on what's going to be best for your model and what you're trying to do. You can do these completely online. They can be done face-to-face. They can be a hybrid of the 2. They can be conducted synchronously, asynchronously. Again, it would all depend on what's best for your needs. And then just a variety of ways that these can be implemented. Again, it's only limited by your imagination. We have clients who have threaded them into course syllabi. We have clients who are making the micro-credentials part of a micro pathway. They have been offered as standalone courses at universities. So just it's limited only by your imagination, and this can really be kind of set up in the way that best serves your needs. So in terms of the course itself, we don't believe that the 21st century skills can be taught through kind of rote instruction or multiple choice. So the micro-credentials rest upon a particular structure or learning philosophy. All of the courses you'll see have this same sort of layout. You'll have your modules, which are in green, an introductory module, a concluding module, which is basically how do you earn the badge, or what can you do with your badge? And then there's going to be a separate module for each of the 4 sub-competencies. So you've got your 4 sub-competencies, each with a separate module. You'll spend some time learning. Learners will then have a practice activity, which is to help prepare them for their assessment. They'll be able to contribute to a message board, provide feedback about other people's assignments, get feedback on their own. Then they'll actually take an assessment. And then at the end of that, there's a reflection section, which is, I think, typically 3 questions. What did you learn? How are you going to use what you've learned? That sort of thing. And that kind of structure of learn, practice, contribute, assess, reflect, that's repeated for each of the sub-competencies. So you're roughly looking at about 12 to 15 hours to earn your digital badge. We have now, excited to mention, self-paced courses that are slightly different. So whereas the previous course would require an instructor to grade assessments and provide feedback on assignments, these self-paced courses can be done, again, on your own. The practice activities have been kind of consolidated, so they take less time. Rather than a facilitator or instructor graded assessment, we have automated assessments, which Tara's going to show you shortly. So the time required for these is less. So you're looking at about 8 hours as opposed to the 12 to 15, and these can be done at your leisure, self-paced, without the need of an instructor. So if you guys don't, would you be interested in seeing kind of what it looks like in a like I can show you. So this is what the visible platform looks like, and you can see your modules. There's that introductory module, a separate module for each sub-competency, and then your kind of concluding module. And that structure, learners basically can click through, going from section to section. This is your introductory section. At the here's where you'll see that repetitive structure where you've got your learning. Here are the different rubric criteria or learning objectives. You'll notice that there's a learning section or playlist for each of those different learning objectives. And that's really just a curation of resources, YouTube videos, articles, things of that nature. Prior to that, there is a pre-assessment, which is a series of 10 questions. And if you score beyond a certain threshold, the system would recommend, okay, we don't think you need to read all these things. You can go right on to the practice. If you don't score above a certain threshold, the system will recommend spend some time learning and going through these different playlists. These are, by the way, editable. This is how it comes out of the box. If whomever's managing your course wanted to add a different article or replace something or remove something, all that is very easily done in the visible system. After they spend time learning, they will have a practice assignment. All of our practice assignments are kind of workplace-based scenarios. There is then a section where they would contribute to a message board. Then they would take their assessment. In this particular self-paced course example, this is an auto assessment. Then they would spend some time in reflection, answering a couple of questions, and then you would see that pattern repeat for each of the different sub-competencies. that's a very kind of crash course, high level overview. A couple of things before I pass it on to Tara. You'll notice if we look at the different sections, you'll see some have required check marks and some do not. This is a setting in the system. You can make certain things required, certain things optional, mix it up a little bit. You can make it so that they have to complete the courses sequentially in order, or you can make it so that they're able to skip around. What is in the system, as I mentioned before, it can be editable. If you wanted to modify slightly the practice scenario and maybe change the name of the business or kind of the text, that can be done. You cannot, because it's the kind of holy grail, change the rubric criteria or the assessment. You can change minor things like the name of it or the industry that's being referred to in the scenarios. So that, Tara, if you would like me to now pass it on to you. Before I go on, were there any questions, or would you like to wait until to the end?
There was one in the chat, Jeff, that we could start with, and then yeah, I'd love to take questions actually on this component before we dive into the assessments.
Okay.
But I just did a quick response here of so we had a question, do the learners find the repetition too boring when completing the coursework? Which is absolutely a fair question. I think the core component there is the courses are structured around a learning philosophy with all of the components, based on the learning sciences that are necessary to make learning stick. So the structure repeats, right? There's learning materials, there's practice activities, there's always a reflection. So the structure does repeat, but what exists within that learning structure in terms of the content itself, the nature of the practice activities, the type of assessment, like all of that varies pretty significantly. And so I haven't heard any feedback related to the fact that folks find it to be repetitive or redundant, but Jeff and Naomi, I would, of course, welcome you to chime in on that as well.
Yeah, to Tara's point, I coach football, and the session structure is the same. There's the warm up, there's this, there's that, but what's done in those, specifically in those different components of the session varies. So I think the repetition of the structure, I think, almost can be a source of comfort because you know what to expect, as opposed to being boring, because if it was the same content over and over again, definitely people are going to get bored. But I think because the content changes combined with the consistent structure, I don't think that there's boredom as much as there is, maybe, like I said, comfort with it or familiarity, let's say.
I added a similar thought into chat, Jeff.
Okay. Anything else?
So here's where we would pivot from learning to assessment, but I realized Jeff just showed you all a lot in a very short period of time. So yeah, I would just welcome this opportunity for any other questions about Visible, the assessments, the rubric criteria, the courses, any of those great things that Jeff just talked about. I am curious. I have a question of my own, actually, and I don't want to mess up your recording structure too much. I know you have a very intentional demo Q&A, so tell me if we can save this for later or if we need to. But I'm just curious, with the 21st Century Learning Group within Cities of Learning, how this type of opportunity relates to the body of work or the body of opportunities. I know you all have the city-based model where you're identifying things within the different locations that learners can engage in. So I'm curious how this could fit into that model that you all already have, but perhaps that's a discussion for after the demo as well.
Yeah, let's save that till the end, Tara, because they are recording, and I think they want to have the content specific to the recording and then move into a dialogue section after that.
Sounds good. Okay. Well, I will carry on then with the assessment component. So you've seen the Visible platform and the courses within there. And the really nice thing is that everything we do at the lab lives on top of this foundation of the 21st Century Skills framework that Jeff talked about at the very beginning. So we have our 9 micro credentials, those, beautiful badge images that you saw. Underneath the 9 micro credentials are the sub-competencies interconnected via the Metro map. Underneath the sub-competencies are the very specific and granular rubric criteria. That lives underneath the courses. The same lives under the assessments, which allows, that's best practice, right? That allows all of the pieces to be able to fit together really well. So my work is in leading the X Credit initiative that the lab is engaged in. And the idea behind X Credit is the X stands for experience, and credit we mean in the form of micro credentials or labor market value as opposed to academic credit specifically. And the idea is that, and I think this will probably resonate given what you all do through Cities of Learning, people develop skills in all kinds of different venues through all kinds of different experiences, not just sitting within a classroom environment. And so whether that's life experience, work experience, military experience, parenting experience, we build skills, and especially these 21st century transferable skills can be developed in any context. So the idea behind X Credit really is, what if you didn't have to take a course to learn a skill that you already have? What if you just had an opportunity to demonstrate your mastery of that skill, jump right to the micro credential, and begin leveraging that micro credential as a signal for hire within your environment, within your local talent marketplace. And so the assessments that I'm about to show were developed through that context, right, as opportunities for individuals to show what they know. The nice thing is that they also happen to plug into the learning experiences that Jeff just shared. So they've got this kind of prior learning experience use case, but also can be a really nice component of the full end-to-end learning experience where you do go through the module and then you do take the assessment. So they exist well in both of those scenarios. Go ahead, Jeff. So the assessment approach that we've used, one of our core design criteria was scalability. And, I'm a firm believer. I'm a competency-based education advocate. I know Naomi and Jeff are as well. Firm believer in competency-based assessment, performance-based assessment, demonstrations of mastery. However, we also know that there are some side effects to that typically, which are that it can be really time-consuming to administer and to score. It can be really subjective based on the individual, like the facilitator or the instructor who is scoring those assessments. And it can also just be a really manual process. And so to try to bring competency-based assessment to scale and make it available for, vastly more learners and individuals, as well as to incorporate our equity focus, we have really focused on automating the measurement of 21st century skills. So you'll see on the right here the two different technologies that we've been working with in order to achieve that. Top right, we've got Muzzy Lane, the Muzzy Lane platform, and you'll get a bit of a closer look at each of these shortly. But the Muzzy Lane technology is a chat-based simulation technology. Bottom right, you'll see Tailspin, which is an extended reality simulation technology. So the commonality there is the simulation component. In every assessment we've designed, we have structured them around workplace-based scenarios. They always take place in the context of work. The individual taking the assessment is given data or information about their workplace, about their role, and about the situation, typically some kind of problem that they're facing, and they have to make decisions on how to navigate their way through that situation. The choices they make reveal the presence or absence, or let's say their level of each of the skills being measured, and also branch them down different paths within the assessment. So their storyline can actually change. And if you'll hit hit one more time, Jeff, to bring up that last little bubble. I'm not sure why. There we go. So in order to earn the critical thinking badge, you saw this graphic earlier in a different form where the badge was in the center and the 4 sub-competencies were around the outside. But just to highlight the competency-based aspect of these assessments, what we're showing here is in order to earn the badge, you do need to separately demonstrate mastery of all 4 of the components that live underneath critical thinking. So there's no averaging taking place here, where if I score 100% on 3 of the assessments and 40% on the last one, by the way, I did not check my math before I gave this example, so don't hold me to that. But if that somehow averaged out to mastery, that's not what we're doing here. This truly is saying you have shown proficiency in all 4 of these sub-competencies individually, and therefore we can go ahead and award you this badge. Go ahead, Jeff. So just 2 examples. Now this is in written form. I know this is less exciting than a demo form, but I just want to give you kind of the on paper version of what is underneath an assessment. So within our Muzzy Lane software, critical thinking badge, the sub-competency is gather and assess relevant information. You heard, Jeff mentioned the sub-competencies earlier. This is the chat-based simulation technology. And this is a sample task that a learner would find themselves faced with. So as a produce manager at a regional supermarket, the store manager has asked you to do some quick information gathering. So there you can see the gather and assess to prepare for a meeting this afternoon. You will have to look for the facts in articles, brochures, and conversations to provide reliable information to your boss, because ultimately she's trying to make a decision on behalf of the store, and your information gathering and assessment will help her make that decision. So you can see workplace-based, very authentic type of situation. The grocery store setting is intentional because one of the beautiful things about 21st century skills is they are relevant and applicable everywhere. But we wanted to make these assessments relevant and applicable to as many people as possible. So rather than situating them very narrowly, let's say in a healthcare setting or an IT setting, at the sub-competency level, we tried to situate them in ubiquitous environments that as many people as possible have familiarity with. The learner does not require any experience working in a grocery store to be successful in the assessment, because if you look at what's being measured in purple here, the grocery store setting is the wrapper. What's really being measured is their ability to demonstrate those core criteria that you can see here on the screen. So this is a video playthrough of one of our assessments. I think just for the sake of time, perhaps what we could do is send the link, or actually, Naomi and Jeff, you tell me, do we want to, like, I can pull it up in my browser, click through, we could sort of scroll through the video, just, they might want to see like glimpses of what the technology looks like, but I also don't think we have time for that.
We're at time, Tara, so maybe go on to the next one, and then based upon the questions, we can pull something up if we need to, and we can send them the link that they can watch the videos.
Okay, that sounds good.
Oh, Tara, I think you just froze, at least for me.
Me too.
Oh, we may have lost Tara a second here. Well, I'll pick it up in the description and she can jump back in once she becomes unfrozen. She at least has a very pensive look about her at the moment. But so what Tara was about to tell you about was the second technology. So the exact same scenario concepts, the exact same criteria using a different technology. So the first technology was that simulation based. And this technology is more of an extended reality technology, meaning it can be done in Oculus or on desktop, but it's avatar based. Like the initial one, the scenario is very easy to understand by most individuals. It is at a hotel, a large hotel. And in this case, you're having to deal with catering issues. And so Dolores is the person you're talking to, and you're helping her solve and critically problem solve. But you got to identify concepts that will allow you to speak with clarity and precision. So Tara, while you had your little blip there, I just kind of went over the information that you were presenting on this slide. Jeff, we can probably go to the next one, and I'll hand it back to Tara.
Thank you, Naomi.
Welcome.
Yep. So you can hear me, right?
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, so similar concept, similar structure, different technology. You can see here it looks very different. That's Dolores in the screenshot. And again, if it's relevant, we can show you more, a little bit of a, sneak peek of what the assessments really look like in a bit, but that's a visual image. You can click to the next slide, Jeff. One thing I do want to mention is that we've had a very robust assessment development process. We've worked through 4 stages of development: ideation, scripting, building, and testing. It's been agile. So there's been iterative feedback loops woven into each of those 4 stages, with feedback from different, subject matter experts and instructional designers, et cetera. The very last feedback loop, we've actually engaged in both an equity and bias review, working with an external consultant to review every assessment for issues of equity and bias, as well as leveraging the usertesting.com user testing platform to get these in the hands of real hiring managers and real job seekers. And so we've gathered copious amounts of data and feedback and actually made adjustments to the assessments based on that. Here you can just see a few high-level statistics that have emerged from that user testing in terms of authenticity, the value of the credential. Now that stat is from the job seeker perspective, and then the hiring signal stat, that is from the employer perspective. And so you can see employers, and I think this is true not just of Education Design Lab's micro-credentials, but of badging and credentialing and alternative credentials more broadly. Employers are trying to figure out how they feel about this, whether they decide it's trustworthy, if it's if the person is really going to have the skill that they say they have. So you can kind of see there's some hesitance there on the part of the employers, but I find actually the big blue block in the middle to be that gives me hope, actually, because it shows me that we're trending in the right direction. We're open-minded to accepting these credentials as part of the hiring process. And that is all from me in terms of the assessments. Again, that was a crash course, and I haven't been checking the chat, but I am very interested to know, what questions you all have for me.
So there weren't any specific questions in chat, Tara, but there was, I was sharing with them that I thought the X credit component would be particularly of interest, aligned to the cities of learning. There is the possibility so that if they don't pass an assessment, that we could then recommend the learning modules that Jeff represented, which those particularly in the auto completion format of it, which would allow for that informal learning opportunity as well. So with that, I think we'll open it up to the group for dialogue. You can tell from the team that we're used to engaging throughout the conversation throughout. And so we're really interested to hear from you.